Welcome back to a homecoming week here at Feathers and Field Goals. I'm Bryce Leslie, your host, joined here with my co-host Dan Steenkammer, co-host and producer Brody Hamilton, as we'll jump into and move on hopefully quickly to homecoming, hosting back at home in the Tub against the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs for one and only one season in Conference USA. But first, we're going to have to start with the Blue Hens' 59-30 loss for Liberty, the Liberty Flames homecoming weekend at Williams Stadium. These two were in attendance, so I want to first get the vibes around the room for this game. Let's just get into it. Dan, what were your thoughts from the game? First quarter, offense looked like it had something going. Ended with 3 on both of those possessions. There was a big moment that maybe flipped the momentum in the game that we'll get to in that second quarter. Delaware then clawed back a little bit, late second, early third, but Liberty extinguished hopes in the Blue Hens coming back in that, ending with the final score of 59-30. So, Dan, overall thoughts on it?
Just a long day. Nobody needs to hear me say that more than once. We felt it on the road. It becomes a long day, getting behind the way Delaware did. It felt like Delaware's sides of the ball wound up kind of taking turns, clicking, and you never had that complementary combination of a stop and a score, and then repeat it one more time to get fully back in the game and all the way back and putting pressure on Liberty as the favorite. So, yeah, Delaware defensively got run over in the second half and spent a lot of time on the field. So that had like an embarrassing feel to it for it being a Saturday on national TV. You know, it wraps up Delaware's string of nationally televised games. So in total, a lot that fans we'd want to forget, but I think Delaware will remember this feeling enough to have an extra fire under it at home as an underdog for homecoming. So a Saturday game in Newark, I think, will mean a lot. Trying to spin this back forward on the November calendar, but I talked about it going into the Liberty week and had asked Coach about it. Just playing the geographic rival in the conference now for the first time, a drivable game for the team and for fans, a head-to-head situation in recruiting going down the line, and Liberty's going to have the head-to-head advantage for a year at least. So, and decisively. So the decisive margin is discouraging. What was the word I was using, I think, that evening from a Delaware POV. And there was a dizzying number of things that happened in the middle of the game, right late first half, early second, that helped blow it wider out of the water and helped it blow wide open. Looking at Delaware having to squeeze in for a field goal right before the half, and Liberty scores a touchdown right away out of the third quarter gates. So I look at those things, Bryce. It was uphill all day when you look at those kind of things happening in the middle of a game that can turn the course the rest of the way.
Thinking about things that turn the course, Delaware at this point of the game was down 7-6 on their own half of the field. It was 3rd and 6. It looked like Liberty had a turnover, but a review took the ball away. It was 4th and 6. So you're thinking, okay, Delaware probably can add like 10 to 15 the yards into that long. I think it was a longer pick. It ended up being a pick on Liberty's half of the 50. It was really, really close to that 50-yard line. You're thinking, okay, Delaware, of course, offense off the field here, but the Blue Hens tried a fake punt that I think, Dan, like I want to throw this to Brody first, but I want to use your words quickly that like watching it back, like had the setup for a misdirection if everyone executed their assignments, that it could have broken huge, but unfortunately was picked up pretty quickly by Liberty's special teams unit and stopped, and Liberty 2 plays later punches it in for their second touchdown of the game. Still only a 1-possession game at that point, but the defense making a 3-and-out stop the possession before, Delaware being forced into a 3-and-out themselves, then find themselves down quickly 14-6. Brody, let's talk. I want to give you the floor to talk about that. I think it's always very easy to say when things don't work that it was a bad decision. But I feel like maybe in that moment it wasn't the right call, especially when the defense made its best stop of the day so far.
I just don't know why you do that there. It was a 1-possession game. The defense is playing great. Delaware had more scoring drives. Technically, had more red zone opportunities in the game to that point than Liberty. But what you're doing there, if you don't convert that fake punt at, like, what was it, like the 30-yard line, if you snap it to the backfield and get tackled for a loss, you're closer to the 20, is you're giving them points. You're spotting them points. They were not playing well between the Horties on offense to that point, and what you're doing is you're kickstarting them. You're giving them that momentum that they're looking for. You're turning to your defense and going, hey, guess what? Now you have to defend 20 yards instead of 80 yards. Maybe closer to like 50 or 60 yards if you actually punt it there. And I just don't know why you do that. Even if it works, I don't know why you do that. It's like playing Madden. It's like you do it just because you have the slider set down, turned down, and you have the difficulty set down to freshman. I think this works if you're like LSU playing McNeese, but when you're two teams that up to this point in the season have looked pretty even in terms of their on-field production, the skill at certain position groups, it's going to be a tight game if you just play it correctly, if you just play it the traditional way. If you're like, listen, we didn't get anything going on this drive, we have to punt away to give our defense a chance to get a stop. Instead, what you're doing there is you're giving your defense 20 yards to and it's a guaranteed 3 points there, even if they stop them on if they make them go 3 and out or 3 and up through the uprights. It's just it's a decision that I don't understand. This game could have gone a variety of ways. We've touched on kind of how these teams look coming into this game. You know, Liberty's offense was not an offense that was clicking, but early on, what you don't want to do in a team coming off their bye week is give them the scoring momentum and the confidence that they need in front of their home crowd on homecoming. And what do you even get if you get out of that fake punt situation? You know, what do you even accomplish? You have the ball at like the 40-yard line, like your own 40. You could get that if you just pin them deep and then make them go 3 and out, which Delaware's defense up to that point hadn't been bad at all. They've been playing pretty well. So I don't know. It's a lot of things that kind of go into that choice. It's a choice that I don't understand, and it's a turn of momentum that kind of swung this game early when up to that point the scoreboard reflected how even it was. You know, Delaware having more red zone opportunities for scoring fewer points, and Liberty having one scoring drive to that point but getting shut down on defense. Besides that, it's bewildering.
Yeah, well, I think that's like and I do agree with you. I don't, like, hindsight, of course, didn't work. I didn't agree with that idea there, but that's only one play of the entire game. Of course, it's a momentum shifter, so I want to flip it into what felt like some positive momentum for Delaware. I was thinking, before I give Dan you the floor to talk about the third quarter a little bit more, the second quarter, thinking about that final drive into half. There was a minute 39 remaining for Delaware after Liberty scored a 2-play touchdown after an interception. A very quick drive. It was only 13 seconds. So you think about, if Delaware had to give up points, at least it was in 13 seconds to give yourself the ball to counter yourselves, because Liberty starts with ball in the second half. But in this, it was 28-6 at the time. Delaware gets a big X play that was inside the 10 that was called back due to a personal foul behind. I think it was like a block behind a blocking penalty downfield.
Blindside block
By the tight end. It was called back to the 30. The play after that, you score a touchdown on what kind of felt like a mini Hail Mary setup, where there was like 6 guys surrounding. Duplessis comes down with the ball, and it's penalty called back as well for an ineligible player downfield. But you settle with 3. A pro definitely to Nate Reed, kicker, short-term memory, broke the touchback record in that game, 3 for 3 with a pair of 42-yard field goals in that. So, I mean, thinking about a pro is definitely Nate Reed, but thinking about still like walking away with 3 from that, giving up a touchdown 35-9 out of the break. But Delaware found themselves right back in it. They scored a touchdown following drive in only a minute and a half. They force a punt after 6 plays, and then they go down themselves again in 4 minutes and score, get the 2-point. They're down 35-24. Dan, I hate the what ifs because I think about if that field goal ended in 7 points at the end of the first. At that point, it's 35-27 in 35-28 in the game. If you think about if they go for 2 at that moment, if 35-28 feels a lot different than 35-24, even though you're thinking though that there's only it's still midway through the third quarter, so there's some hope. Liberty extinguished that hope quickly. But talk about this third quarter of, maybe being down 26, you're thinking, oh, this is a Jack State game, but Delaware offense and defense for a drive found ways to maybe make this feel like a game inside of Williams Stadium.
Yeah, it had been an emotional day, high emotions already by the time you were getting into the third quarter. Like, it probably felt to fans and then maybe on the field a little bit like, wow, it's only the third quarter. And that's a good thing that it was only the third quarter, even as the day felt long, because there was time for Delaware to make up ground. It did make up ground. But in the end, Liberty was so comfortable. You could see, when Liberty's blocking that well up front and has alleys to run the ball on offense as well as it did and get around the edges and gash Delaware on the ground, it allows Vasco at quarterback to also have everything in sync. And Vasco's athletic enough to run it himself too. Delaware did not have enough answers defensively to stem the tide enough to set up a full comeback. And Liberty did not make the mistake that would let Delaware all the way back in the game. So it's a testament to Liberty too. It's a Liberty team that hadn't played in some time, had been off, and was coming off of the midweek schedule in October too. So Liberty had been idle for a little bit, and when a team's been idle, maybe they do a couple of silly things, extra mistakes, knocking rust off. That was not how Liberty looked. You can tell Liberty plays with an edge at home for homecoming, just the turnout there and wanting to protect home turf against a new league mate. So Liberty did all the right things. I mean, that's obvious when you score almost 60 points in a conference game. It's part of what makes it feel like the optics are really rough for Delaware, because the optics at the final score don't show that Delaware made progress in the third quarter, but how much does that matter? I mean, Delaware didn't quite have enough later in the third quarter. I think the game was in some ways over on a practical level, was over when Delaware turned it over on downs. I understand Delaware going for it on 4th and 2 at its own 33. I'm not disputing that with about a minute to go in the third quarter. I got that decision to go for it. Just Delaware coming up a yard shy, and that's what does that remind us of, right? Like another turnover on downs against Western Kentucky, right? That helped kind of set the course for the rest of that game. So I think that Delaware, it's like too little too late in the third quarter. And the hope was Delaware would at minimum make it look optically better, because so much of this feels like, okay, just reassure Delaware's followers that UD belongs here, and Delaware is going to hang with somebody on the road as an underdog. Delaware is going to hang with the team that's supposed to be at the top of Conference USA most years. And Delaware could not hang with Liberty, other than Delaware throwing the ball around the yard enough to score 30 points, which is a plus. And we continue to have good faith in Delaware moving the ball down the field one way or another. But I guess I'm going in circles here. Delaware's expectations are certainly higher than just making the final score look respectable. But when you don't even achieve that, it does bring up a lot of warning signs, a lot of warning flashes about Delaware's ability to finish a game against this kind of caliber of opponent.
I think about the first 2 drives when they moved the ball down the field. The first drive of the game ending with a field goal that it was 3rd and 8. It just missed in the end zone. That pass by Sean Wilson, went right over his fingertips on that ball down the right side of the field, taking 3 there. The second drive, you get the ball after a nice play to end the quarter. I think I was thinking in my head, okay, they're going to run the clock out, but they ended the quarter with a 20-yard pass to Max Patterson on the right side of the field to get inside the 10. You're thinking, okay, this is a great time for the offense to punch it in. 3 plays, -2 yards, so they had to settle for 3 again. So I just think about red zone execution. We're going to get into Louisiana Tech. We talked about maybe ways that didn't go right in the middle of the game, but just setting the tone in the beginning of the game. You think about the UConn game that they won. They found ways to get X plays on offense. They found ways to they found ways to score on all 3 levels of X plays or just long drives punching it in, and that was their response to having really good drives against a Colorado team, but only walking away with 7 points. So the execution switch from the Colorado game to the UConn game was noticeable. But to start that game, you're thinking you're on the road, you're trying to take over someone's trap, and walking away with 2 great drives to start the game, 6 points. Doesn't it gives the offense a team that it gives the Liberty offense a team that hasn't played in over 2 weeks a chance to settle into their packed stadium on homecoming weekend. So you're thinking if you get ahead by a touchdown or 2, that flips the whole vibes around. So talk about maybe not agreeing with decisions, but I'm thinking about more on the executional standpoint of how could they have helped themselves more on both sides of the ball in the beginning of the game. Brody, let's wrap it up because this is a game I want to move on from. It doesn't feel good losing by 29 ever. 2 road nationally televised games in October and early November. Delaware fell behind by a lot in the second and third quarter and had to catch themselves up. I think it's been a little bit of a wake-up call. We're not used to having week in, week out tough games. Another really tough game coming up here. What does Delaware – we're going to get into our 3 and out, but what does Delaware need to improve on heading into this matchup?
Well, first I want to say that Liberty's a good team, and the results on the field up to this point so far this year maybe haven't reflected the level of dominance that Liberty is used to, but they had a lot of injury woes coming in. They got healthy, they got back to where they wanted to be, and we were the ones that they took it out on at homecoming. There were a few pretty bad matchups. I think about the run defense versus their running back, which is could be a callback to the same way that we lost the Jacksonville State game. If you can run it, why pass it? And that just makes the game just go even faster. The clock keeps going, and you kind of give up the opportunity to come back if there's not enough time on the clock left over. And they also have a great atmosphere. I'll say that. I'm not going to say that I enjoyed my time there, but they have fantastic facilities. Jeremiah, who walked us around, was very hospitable. He showed us around, and it's a very nice facility. They had Domino's pizza and nothing bunt cakes in there. In their stadium, everyone who was there was very happy to be there. And their between play kind of entertainment kept the crowd in it if the score didn't already. And so it's a tough environment to play in. But thankfully we'll be at home this week. Hopefully, I'm looking at the statistics right now, and Louisiana Tech has 3 running backs with over 100 carries all 3 of them. They average 3.7 yards per carry or more. So that's going to be something that I'm looking at moving forward is the rush defense. I want to see the Hens in a 5-2 defensive front, at least for the first quarter of the game. Establish it early that they're not going to run, and then once the first quarter is over, go back into 3-3-5. But that 5-2 starting early really beef up that defensive line. I'm not sure how many D-line starters we still have healthy, but bring them all in. Bring them all in for every snap.
As Jack Hall said in the Blue Line Coaches show earlier in the Hippo package, when they had to stop UConn on 3rd and short and 4th and short at the end of that game, the Hippo package. So that's what you're looking for to start this one.
Exactly. That's what I run every down in CFB 26. I run Hippo every down because you're not going to run on me. If you pass, that's fine. That's what... I don't care about that, but you're not going to run the ball because running the ball is what opens up the pass. And it's not like the coaching staff doesn't know this. It's not like they don't know that they shouldn't be giving up yards. It's about execution. It's about the right scheme being called, the right looks being identified. We just can't let them run all over us again this week because that's how we've lost games in the past.
Yeah, well, I definitely didn't want to, because I don't want to take away from our 3-and-out, because there is more than three things that Delaware needs to do better heading into this weekend. I'm just excited to be back in the tub. Like, I think being on the road versus being at home changes my personal vibes on games. I think about how tough road environments are. So, think about homecoming weekend. I can't wait for hopefully the tub just being a fortress for Louisiana Tech's only appearance, at least as a conference game heading in, at least in the near future. How far they schedule out these games, who knows? Dan, you haven't really been part of this. I'll give you one chance to kind of wrap us up before you get to focus on Louisiana Tech with our guest for the scout team this week.
I think I'm looking more at Louisiana Tech right now and saying, and I'm allowed to do this because we're here talking, the three of us. We've been doing this for weeks. We can be real about it. Obviously, our primary focus is on just this week, but I'm considering Louisiana Tech in the big picture. This is Delaware's last chance to get an impressive conference win. Every win is impressive in conference in a sense when you're talking about first state, first season, and you haven't seen these guys by and large, and you're new to the game, so I'm not here to talk disparagingly about anybody on the schedule. But just on paper, looking at the way teams are ranked in the standings, like Louisiana Tech is Delaware's last chance in conference for a quote big win, and one where you can say, hey, we're hanging our hat on that. That helps catapult us up the pecking order that Brody will share. The other couple games in conference, you're going to Sam Houston, you're hosting UTEP. You better not lose to UTEP at home in late November. Like, that should be Delaware's ball game, where Delaware is playing in the colder weather, and Delaware hypothetically will have a little more to play for, to have at minimum, hopefully the 6-6 finish at least. Don't know where UTEP's going to stack up. Sam Houston's had a dismal, tough year in first year, playing without Coach Keeler and the defensive coordinator who was with him. So I say all that to say Louisiana Tech's putting together a really nice campaign. We talk about the stuff that's impressive about the Bulldogs. So Delaware at home in November. This has been a tough spot for Delaware against a quality conference opponent in November. I think about Nova's an obvious one, but just historically, even in the FCS, you run into a team this late in the year. The book's kind of out on Delaware in a sense. Coach Carty's always creative in adding layers to Delaware's offense, but in some ways there's a lot to look at with Delaware so far. I know some folks are a little worried that Delaware's going to get figured out, at this point later in the year. Delaware's not as new in terms of having a lot more crossover video in Conference USA games by now. So I look at this as a huge moment. This moment being on homecoming, being in Newark against a top half team in the conference. What is Delaware going to do with this opportunity? Because this is one of Delaware's last chances to make that kind of statement win that can be a big turnaround from the downer we saw in Lynchburg. I treat this as one of those last big chances. I haven't mentioned being on the road at Wake will be its own category, but I don't think we're in any position to say Delaware's got a realistic upset look at Wake after faltering the way it did on the road at Liberty. So I'm not even going to go there with Wake Forest. I'm just going to say this Louisiana Tech game I treat as one of Delaware's last chances to kind of have like a UConn type turning point game again.
That's a great point, Dan. I really wish that we got Wake Forest in week 2 and Colorado in week 13, because the way that both those teams have gone, they've totally flip-flopped in terms of their momentum, and the way that those teams have looked.
Well, Brody, I'm just gonna very quickly just give you the intro for the Pecking Order Rival Rundown. Let's just jump into it. Dan talked about it, so let's get into it from here.
Well, welcome back to the Pecking Order. This is my weekly power ranking series. If you've watched the show before, you know how it goes. I'm just going to throw it up on the screen. So the bottom four remain unchanged. Sam Houston, Middle Tennessee, UTEP, and New Mexico State. They're all here at the bottom. I don't see a ton from these teams that I like. But the one thing I do like is that we play two of them in the next handful of weeks, which hopefully will get Delaware to that 6-win mark that they've been looking for. Number 8, we have FIU. This is a team with really bad momentum right now. They do have a quality win against Western, and a crazy quality win against Western. But looking at this team, their momentum is heading down. Number 7 is Delaware. That's another team. We talk about momentum. We thought that the Middle Tennessee game would really catapult us back into having a game every week, which is what we lacked during October when we did have that great momentum coming in. But the momentum is heading back down again. But they have an opportunity the next handful of weeks to put some wins together. And Liberty's a great team. Obviously they're higher on here than us. I'm not gonna say that on a neutral field Delaware would be favored to win after week 11 or week 10. Number 6, we have Missouri State. Now here's a team who looking at their wins, don't have a ton of quality out there, but they are trending upwards as opposed to Delaware, who is trending downwards. It really hurt me to put Delaware in the bottom half of this pecking order, but I'm looking a lot at momentum. I think that's the theme of the program this week is momentum. And even though most state, doesn't have a ton of great wins, obviously Marshall early, and then some of the bottom heaters throughout the conference for the last handful of weeks. Of course, FIU, I think recently they played, and Missouri State won that game. And they're just trending upwards in a way that number 7 and number 8 are not. I don't know what that means for future success, but they're higher for this week. Number 5 is Liberty. Talk about momentum. This team starting out absolutely horrible, losing the majority of their non-conference games, a slate of non-conference games that didn't even include a Power 5 team. But then they just turned it around. They had a nice little early schedule in conference. They had UTEP and New Mexico State early, and they took care of both of those teams. And then they had their bye week, and they managed to get healthy and turn it on against Delaware. They're looking back where they want to be in terms of that offense actually scoring points, which is something that they struggled to do up until last week, which is great that it happened against us. But this is a quality Liberty team looking to improve. And improve so far they have. Number 4, we have La Tech. Again, this is a contender, but just had a couple bad games to bump them down, but they're looking to continue their momentum. Western Kentucky at number 3. It might be a little bit high for this Western Kentucky team, but they still find ways to win. And it's crazy, actually, how they win these games. So as long as they have that devil magic, they'll continue to win those one-possession games. And then the top 2 are still the top 2, Kennesaw and Jacksonville State. They are the top 2. They play here in a bit. I'm not sure if it's this week or next week, but it's coming up. The rivalry game that they air is coming up, and that'll be great to watch because I think that's an early conference championship game, and one of these teams has to lose. And as of right now, they're both undefeated in conference play, which will be great. So that's my pecking order. As for rival rundown, I don't really have much to say other than James Madison might make the college football playoff, and that would just make me put a pistol in my mouth. But besides then, obviously, I mean, there's not a whole lot going on right now. There's not a lot of matchups between teams in the rival rundown. We had UMass play Akron last night in a barn burner that I watched every minute of, despite not having any reason to do that. It fills me with a deep melancholy that UMass finally joined a conference and it wasn't the same conference as Delaware was in. What's their reasoning for that? I had some nice banter with some UMass guys on Twitter, on X, the Everything app, and we talked about the trophy rivalry once that's a conference game again someday, being the Apple Cider Donut Cup, and we played around week 10 when the leaves are changing. that's just electric TV. You know, put us on ESPNU if you really want to. But not a whole lot to talk about. We're just going to move on. That's the pecking order and the rival rundown.
Thanks, Brody. Now I'm going to throw it over to Dan to talk with Evan Spencer of Go Tech, Please Don't Die for our Louisiana Tech scout team for homecoming weekend.
The Feathers and Field Goals podcast continues with the scout team segment for this week, Delaware versus Louisiana Tech. And getting a look at the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs, we now bring on Evan Spencer of Go Tech, Please Don't Die, which is one of the best handles on Twitter, one of the best podcast and content platforms in Conference USA and a Conference USA Roundtable. So I'm bummed that this is our one meeting, Evan, with the Conference USA banner as a league game. Of course, as a reminder for folks, Louisiana Tech Sunbelt bound, going to go see Delaware's rival James Madison over in the Sunbelt after this. Or actually, we don't know the full timeline yet. It could be after this season. It hasn't all been ironed out. You would know better than me the latest on that, Evan. But this could be the one time that we get the football matchup as league mates. I guess I shouldn't speak too soon with the finalization of the timing of realignment. Not quite done yet, but getting this stuff on the field, Evan, that'll be what's most important for Saturday when you and your colleague do arrive in Newark. Going to be excited to welcome you to the ball game and to the tub. Looking at Louisiana Tech overall, it's been a winning start to the year. Top half of the league is where Louisiana Tech sits in Brody's pecking order right here on Feathers and Field Goals. Tell us a little bit about how this year has begun and gotten to the home stretch now. Head coach Sonny Cumbie, it looked like a big year for him from afar, and it looks like he's delivered so far.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head there. We've done pretty well so far this season. You can't really complain too much. 5-3, losses to LSU, loss to Western Kentucky, and a loss to Kennesaw, who I think we're all shocked to see at the top of the power rankings, both Feathers and Field Goals and otherwise, right? They're kind of the Cinderella story this year. So, going into the season, if you watched the CUSA Roundtable podcast, you saw me be very pessimistic about our outlook. And I told you before we went on air, I wasn't just playing it up. I really genuinely believed that we were going to have a pretty rough year. So sitting here at 5-3 is pretty good. And, you mentioned Sonny Cumbie, definitely on the hot seat coming into the season. I don't remember his exact record, but it was something like 11-27 or 10-27 or something like that. He's got the worst win percentage in school history of any coach that coached longer than a single season. So you got to figure you're on the hot seat if that's your stack going in, right? So he's done a pretty good job this year taking a different approach. He last year, about 8 games in, he gave up play calling duties. And then in the offseason, we went out and hired Tony Franklin, who's a longtime coordinator and former Louisiana Tech coordinator from a very, very good offense back when we were in the WAC. We had the number 1 offense in the nation in 2012. Tony Franklin ran that offense. So we were all very excited about that. He has not brought that high octane that we were used to. They were scored 51.5 points a game that year. So you can imagine how fun that was to watch. But all that to say, I mean, I think as a Tech fan, you can't be too pessimistic about the season right now. With that being said, we're 5-3. We are not bowl eligible yet. We are, expecting to be bowl eligible. We wanted to be in the conference conversation. That's taken a back seat with the 2 losses right now, but it's still within the realm of possibility. But 3 out of the last 4 here on the road, and Sonny Cumbie so far in his career has won 3 road games as a Tech head coach. 2 of those were at UTEP. So we'll see. First time we're ever going to Delaware. We've never played a game in our over 100-year history in the state of Delaware. We're excited to kind of meet a new opponent. I'm excited about the tub. I had no idea that's what you call your stadium, so I want to hear more about that too. But yeah, we're excited to be where we are right now, but there's unfinished business for sure.
Tubby Raymond Field would be the quick answer. Tubby Raymond, legendary coach at Delaware, a Hall of Famer, and so the Tub for shorthand, very affectionately known. So
Gotcha.
we're glad that
Okay.
to publicize that nickname to the Conference USA world. But it'll be Louisiana Tech coming to the Tub, and at QB for the Bulldogs, Blake Baker. He's emerged as the starter. Missed time briefly earlier this season in that Kennesaw loss that you mentioned, Evan. But what about Blake Baker has enabled him to become that top dog for the Bulldogs?
Yeah, going into the season, he actually wasn't the starter. And many people, myself included, were surprised that Evan Bullock wasn't the starter either. He started, I think, 8 games for us last season. Trey Kukoc was the starting quarterback going in, and he, was relatively ineffective against Southeastern and then in the LSU game as well. So we started mixing quarterbacks in, and Blake Baker just had that right combination of, pocket presence and, passing ability with the ability to take off and run as well. So we've seen him, he had a 100-yard rushing performance, I believe, against New Mexico State way earlier in the season. He put up 42 yards on the ground last week against Sam Houston in that big blowout win. So he brings a different dimension that gives you a little bit more ability to roll the pocket, ability to make things happen with his legs when you do things like drop 8 in coverage. So it just brings a better dynamic. And he's a better passer than Kukoc. Kukoc can also run, but Baker brings more in the passing department. So I think that's been kind of the surprise, is how balanced he can be and bringing both of those elements to the game.
Baker supported by a pair of rushers, top running backs, it looks like, by the stats for Louisiana Tech. And Wiggins is the name I was familiar with more in preseason, but there's another runner, too, I know, who's at least statistically even outdoing Wiggins in the yardage. Is it a 1-2 punch combination, or what's kind of the approach at running back does it look like for Louisiana Tech?
Yeah, they pretty much roll with the hot hand, to be honest with you. And right now, all signs are pointing to Clay Tevenin being more of a feature back. Last week he saw a majority of the carries, at least in non-garbage time play. And, Coach Cumbie said this week in his press conference that he's been practicing at that level, and he's brought it to the game the last couple weeks. So it's hard to take the ball out of his hands and give it to somebody else. With that being said, I mean, Wiggins brings a lot. He was one of the leading rushers last year. So it wouldn't be hard to see him having a breakout performance and kind of putting it all together this season as well. There's a couple other guys that get mixed in. We've got Andrew Burnett, who we saw run this weird Wildcat formation a couple weeks ago against Western Kentucky. And let's see, I'm forgetting one. Or am I forgetting one? Those are sort of the main 3. And then also you're going to see some quarterback runs out of Blake Baker. Last week we mixed in Trey Kukoc out of the backfield and got him some like swing passes, and he's pretty athletic and fast. So got that angle too. There's a sort of backup quarterback lining up in the shotgun with the quarterback. So I don't know. Maybe some weird trickeration can come out of that too.
Another big name for Louisiana Tech, I'm looking at Eli Finley at tight end, a 6'6" tight end out of Texas. It looks like just a handful to deal with in terms of covering such a big target in the passing game.
Yeah, I mean, he came in. He was one of the first team all-conference players coming into the season. Sort of really high expectations for him. And he does lead the team in both receptions and yards so far. But with that being said, I mean, I don't know, maybe the Tech fan in me is just a little underwhelmed by these stats through 8 games, 333 yards. I mean, we've had receivers in my time following the team super closely that had like 1,800-yard seasons, right? So it's kind of like, okay, we're talking about him as this big target, and he is, but then there's entire games where he gets targeted maybe once or twice. So I don't know if it's just a scheme and they're not mixing him into that scheme, or maybe teams are double teaming him. I'm not the biggest X's and O's guys, right? So I couldn't really tell you what's going on from a film standpoint there, but he definitely is one that you have to watch out for. He had two long in our win over Southern Miss earlier this season. He both the first drive and the second drive, he had a long catch that was just short of the goal line. He kind of ran out of steam, but that long of 72 there against Southern Miss, and then he had another one for about 49 yards on the next drive, just literally the exact same play to the other side of the field. And then I guess they remembered they needed to cover him. So he'll make you pay if you leave him open for sure.
Just has the look of it for sure. And then not just looking at the height and weight listing, but watching him move. It seems like maybe there are more yards to come that you're talking about. You've seen more eye-popping yardage numbers. Well, Delaware's got to hope they don't come on homecoming Saturday in Newark. We basically started going position by position here on offense. I shouldn't overlook offensive line either for Louisiana Tech. I think Delaware fans would expect, just picturing a Louisiana team, a Texas team, or that region of the country, which is so much of CUSA, just picturing that team in the mind's eye, a pretty big bunch up front. How has that offensive line helped Louisiana Tech be a productive offense right there in the top half of CUSA?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting because they've had games where they've been downright awful. Looking at the PFF scores afterwards, it's like 45, 50. The highest is like maybe in the upper 50s. But then last week they were actually named by some publication on Twitter. I don't even remember which one, but they were named the best offensive line unit in the nation for last week because we had 425 yards rushing against Sam Houston, which is the third most in school history. Again, we've been playing football since 1900 basically. So that's like really impressive. Obviously now the opponent not so good, but so it's kind of the inconsistency that baffles you a little bit because they've had games where they've kept the quarterback clean. They've had games where they've given up a pressure on every other down, it feels like. So you never know what you're going to get really with this unit. And I think, looking into some things, it looks like, Delaware's run defense maybe isn't the best part of their game. So maybe we'll see some of that this week. But I think I saw on our On3 network site, Bleed Tech Blue, which definitely give them a follow too. They're much more of a X's and O's, and they really, really know their stuff over there. But he said that the New Mexico State game and the Sam Houston game, we've averaged 370 yards rushing in those two games. All of our other games, 105 yards per game rushing. So it's kind of like, how do we find success in those two games? I don't know. And I'm sure the coaching staff is a little frustrated about that too. Right. But yeah, I mean, there's some guys definitely who can step up and have a great game. But I think as a unit, it's been hit or miss, and more misses than hits so far this season.
Well, the hits have been coming on defense for Louisiana Tech. How do the Bulldogs lead Conference USA in interceptions and then returns for touchdowns too on a quartet of these picks? How has that come about this season?
Oh yeah, leading the nation in defensive touchdowns, I believe. We had another one last week, so I think Tennessee had tied us or something, but hopefully we've taken that spot back. To be honest with you, I don't really know. I mean, it's been opportunistic. Last year we didn't have the turnovers. We had an excellent defense last year, number one in Conference USA in terms of yardage and points allowed and all that stuff, but we just didn't have the takeaways. And this year we've kind of had both, outside of a couple of anomalies, like the Kennesaw game, but every other game outside of that, we've had takeaways. We've had 6 defensive touchdowns through 8 games. And it's really just these guys are in the right position and they're making smart decisions for the most part. And I mean, it also helps that we played UTEP and Malachi Nelson is not so good. He threw 2 really, really bad pick sixes, some of the worst ones I've ever seen. But the guys still have to take advantage of it, and I think with this defense, they're very opportunistic. They hit hard. They're going to come hit you hard. Sometimes they'll get penalized for that. I don't know if you may have seen the the targeting call against Western Kentucky in the first half that the conference actually tweeted out a video celebrating it and then quickly deleted it because they realized it was going to be called targeting. Anyway, they're gonna hit you, and they're gonna hit you hard, and sometimes that causes the ball to come out. Sometimes it causes an unnecessary roughness or a targeting penalty. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention that Colby Fields, the leader of the defense, the preseason defensive player of the year, and probably the hopeful to actually win that award in the postseason when it actually matters. He went down in that UTEP game I mentioned with a season-ending leg injury. So, huge loss for the Bulldogs. The very next game was that Kennesaw game where we, for the first time, just kind of let an offense walk all over us. And so, we wondered how the rest of the team would respond with him, not being on the field anymore. They seem to have settled in a little bit. There's some other linebackers that have really stepped up, some younger guys like Jaden Mayfield from Ruston High, the guy who Zarek Hill, who got ejected for targeting, is another guy who's really stepped up. Alonzo Jackson Jr. I mean, there's guys all over this defense. I could name the whole unit and tell you need to watch out for them, right?
Yeah. Well, that shows in terms of the averages on defense, I would say defensive efficiency too. So that stood out to Delaware folks, I would say. Entering this one, Delaware's passing offense against that Louisiana Tech air defense. Nick Minicucci liking to throw it up, spread all the way out to the sidelines, get to Duplessis and Wilson. But Louisiana Tech, opportunistic is the word at minimum with the numbers that we've been talking about. Hey, Evan, this has been a great 15 minutes that it flies by so much. How can folks find Go Tech, Please Don't Die? Again, an all-time abbreviation favorite for me, too, with GTPDD, right? So I just love the shorthand for it, too. Where can folks find what's going on there on the platform?
Yeah, we are on Twitter. We're Go Tech, Please Don't Die, but that's too many characters. So GOTECHPLSDNTDIE is our handle. We have a blog where we usually we're not that active, but GTPDD.dog, D-O-G. We have merch. Nathan, my co-host, and I, we also both write articles for Bleed Tech Blue every week. I write a 3 Keys to Victory post. He writes stat attacks, so kind of looking at some of the advanced stats. But yeah, we're out there. We try to, our goal is to have a good time with it, So we, our thing is that our shtick is that we take it both too seriously, and we realize that it's a game, right? So we love our school, and we want Tech to go, and we want them to not die, but we're here no matter what. So so check us out, hit us up, and me and Nathan will be at the game. So if you see us in our little tech swag here, come say hi. I've never been to Delaware before either, so it'll be exciting.
I'm really excited to welcome you both because it's part of the thrill of being a new member. CUSA, get a chance to welcome people who haven't even really been to the state more than anything, even let alone the university. So a great introduction. I'm counting on Delaware fans. They'll be a great host. I know that we really enjoyed, other than game time, Jeremiah, the other Jerry at LU, was a great host to Brody and me. So one more plug for Jerry, too. So I was saying to Jerry, I was like, we're looking forward to returning the favor with the La Tech week coming. We've been talking about since preseason. That's Evan Spencer from Go Tech, Please Don't Die. It wraps up our scout team. And now the Feathers and Field Goals podcast continues with Bryce giving us an update on Blue Hens fall sports that are not football and winter sports getting started, too. A lot going on in the 302.
Thanks, Dan, for that interview with Evan. Super excited for him to make the trip to Newark this weekend and hopefully enjoys the experience in Delaware Stadium, but hopefully not too much fun as the game starts. I'm going to do a quick run through our interviews this week. We decided to go a different direction here with recapping on all of the fall and winter sports. We have fall sports starting to wrap up, and then we have winter sports that have tipped off their seasons this week with Delaware men's and women's basketball on the court. So first, we'll start out with Delaware women's soccer. Unfortunately, after a great season that they had, a fantastic non-conference slate to start the year, a lot of close games they were in Conference USA, their first season of conference, with a lot of draws, finished with the 6th seed in Conference USA. And what would have been a draw in the regular season was an unfortunate PK shootout loss on the first day of Conference USA. Dan was at the game after the football weekend, losing 6-5 in PKs from 9 shooters. It's always, as a former soccer player myself, it's always a tough way to end the season. Really exciting as a neutral fan, but unfortunately having a horse in that race and being on the losing end is never fun to see. But super young team, a lot of the best players who were underclassmen. I mean, goalie Sophia Hall with a lot of awards throughout the season. A lot of the goal scorers, non-seniors. So excited to see how they build in the coming years. Men's soccer. This is a tough one because we're recording on a Wednesday, and they play Wednesday afternoon, and it's such a crucial game. They're on the road, wrapping up the regular season against Kansas City. Kansas City has won 6 straight. It's always been a really tough team in the Summit. Kansas City, Denver, adding UMass into the conference this year. It's Summit's ranked as a top 5 soccer conference in the country right now from Massey ratings, and really cool to see Delaware up at the top of that list, being inside of the top 50 in RPI this year, of course, with their record of 12-1-2, and they're getting close to. I think they're missing like one big win to maybe having a case for an at-large place onto their resume. So being on the road against Kansas City, who is inside the top 30 in RPI, winning that on the road is not only big from that, but thinking about it from a Summit League perspective, winning this secures you because Kansas City's 4-1 right now. Delaware's 3-1-1 as the 3 seed. Top 4 make it. Top 2 host semifinal home games. So, of course, I'm breaking all this down just to say this result's already going to be out by the score is done. But if they do win, they will have a home semifinal game next week. And if Denver loses, they'll have home field throughout the entire playoffs. So we're rooting for Denver to lose to St. Thomas, and we're rooting for Delaware to beat Kansas City today. St. Thomas, I think the 4th spot will be fun because right now it's UMass at 1-3-2, but then the 3 teams below them are 1-3-1. So it'll be really fun. It's deadline day. St. Thomas, if they can win against Denver, I think they might get that 4th spot. But Oral Roberts and Omaha play each other, so if a winner in that will overtake UMass. But if they tie, and if St. Thomas ties, that leaves 4 teams at 1-3-2. I don't know what's going to happen for that 4th spot. So you will know because the bracket's already going to be out by the time you listen. But I'll jump over into field hockey. It's been a weird season as an independent. Fortunately, only one season as an independent for the program, as they have their conference title coming up against UC Davis in the MPSF Field Hockey Championship. And hopefully, I'm excited to see all the new teams hopefully joining that in the future. I know that they're going to have to get to that minimum team amount to get that AQ for the conference moving forward. Volleyball picked 3rd in conference preseason. A lot of turnover in the roster this year. They had a solid run in the beginning of October, have dropped their last, I believe, 6 games. I'm just moving tabs because I've had so many open right now. But top 8 make the conference tournament. Delaware sitting at 9th right now at 5-7. But it's not like they're really close to that 8 seed mark right now, and that's what you're hoping for. They do play Western Kentucky this weekend, who is receiving notes on the national poll, so it's going to be really tough to pull that out. But they finished their season against Sam Houston, who is 0-12 in Conference USA play right now. So you're thinking about if they can somehow pick up one of these 2 against Western, take care of both against Sam Houston, hopefully they can squeeze into a spot in postseason, because that's still the ultimate goal, a reset of schedule and moving forward there. Get into before basketball, I want to talk about ice hockey. Of course, they're working through their first year ever as a program. They're currently 1-11. I think it's just a lot of freshmen on the team. I think they have only 3 non-freshmen on the team. It's going to be a work in progress there. Just super excited to see them grow as a program. Before I get into the winner, just talk about men's lacrosse, their season. Brody was boots on ground in Newark for that, to see them tie Johns Hopkins, a Big Ten school who's, of course, like the Gonzaga of lacrosse, Gonzaga of lacrosse, or we think about the Dallas Baptist of lacrosse when you're thinking of these really good schools with only one D1 sport. But they tied Hopkins. A lot of turnover on the roster last year, and a lot of guys coming back. So I'm excited to see the Blue Hens on the field this spring. Winner, men's basketball falls at Bucknell, missing 2 starters, practically 3 starters. Kevin Riley on a snap count for football, minutes restriction for basketball. Still working his way back, missed all the preseason, but Justin Fernandez, Nana Njoku, the 2 Big East transfers from Villanova, Providence and Villanova, in that order, not on the court yet. They play Wilmington in the Education Day. I'll be there, excited for that one Friday. It'll be a packed crowd. I watched the Middle Tennessee game in a similar fashion with Education Day, and it was basically just a crowd full of high frequency screams all day. So it'll be a different environment, but nonetheless be fun to be back in the Bob. Women's basketball picks up their first win of the year against Bloomsburg at home, and they play Navy Friday night in Newark for the second half of the homecoming weekend. So if you're planning on going the full weekend, please go to Education Day if you can work your way. Full of all the elementary schools in attendance, and the women's basketball game against Navy, hopefully getting their first Division I win of the season, and of course ending with this football game that I will now let us get into our 3 and out, our takeaways from our talk with Evan of Go Tech Please Don't Die, and our thoughts of what the team needs to do on Liberty, even though we kind of started that at the end of the Liberty segment. But nonetheless, let's jump into that now. Dan, Brody, I was talking about this. I said after that Liberty loss, 59 to 30, 31 to 30, the Blue Hens still moved to 4-4 and still doesn't take away the goal of 6 wins. I think that we talked about maybe, the directions take you somewhere different when we talked about our Apple Maps versus our Waze discussion a few weeks ago. But thinking about this week, I still think 6 wins are on the table, with the road game to Sam Houston, with the UTEP home game. Those are 2 that you have to get for the Blue Hens. But thinking about that formula, the team wants to go 1-0 every week. And I don't even want to think about those games until we get through this one, but thinking about being 5-4, I don't think about the path to 6 wins, and I don't really press about that each week moving forward if they find a win at home here. So let's start with this. Brody, you kind of got into the run defense a little bit. What's your 3 and out take for, I think Delaware's floating between a 3.5 and a 5.5 point underdog at home. The last time they were an underdog that big, they covered the spread against UConn by a lot. I think they were 10.5 underdogs. They won by 3, and then the Western game, being home favorites, end up losing. I know the Middle Tennessee game, they were big favorites, only winning by 3, even though it didn't feel like a 3-point game overall. But I think maybe they want to be the underdogs in this.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think that this isn't my topic for 3 and out, but getting this team off of national TV, I think, might pay dividends. This team has not performed up to the standard on national TV, and I'm sure that that's a coincidence, and it's just mid-season kind of dregs or whatever. But as an onlooker's perspective, getting this team off of national TV might be the answer, but no. My real 3 and out does have to do with run defense, but not just run defense throughout the whole game. I think run defense in the third and fourth quarters are what I'm looking at most, because that's when the game can really turn. Keeping it close into halftime has been something that the Hens have been pretty decent at all year. Even thinking back to Colorado, this team has kept it close at halftime for most of these games. Coming out of halftime, the third quarter is where that big deficit comes, and then they have to claw back in the fourth. In some of these closer games, you think Western Kentucky. This happened in Jacksonville State as well, even though they were ahead by a little bit more at halftime. Happened at Liberty, who was tight at halftime, and then the third quarter opens up. The run defense is what does it. The run defense opens up everything else. I'm starting to sound like some old head defensive coordinator from the 90s. This is what they always parrot, is that that stopping the run stops everything else. And doing that coming out of halftime, I think is going to be the big momentum swing, and has to be the big momentum swing if you're Delaware. Stopping Louisiana Tech from continuing to drive the ball after half, tightening up, making those adjustments, and putting your foot down that if you want to score, has to come on explosive pass plays. It can't just be running it up the middle like we saw with Liberty and with Louisiana Tech.
Brody, I'm with you on that second half, thinking about Delaware being down on 2 road games against 2 really good rush offenses in Jack State and in Liberty. And what maybe helps in that, if Delaware can put away drives early, and that's going to be mine, is I talked about that of, 2 penalties hurt the Blue Hens in scoring points at the end of the second quarter, but before that, finishing with only 3 out of the first 2 drives. I think about the offense helping the defense a little bit more. If you score points, you can use the run game for all 4 quarters. If you have a lead, then you get to open up your playbook, and then maybe that limits the amount of times Louisiana Tech can break out the run. So I think I'm focusing that on the offense, just being as efficient as they were in the UConn game and the FIU game, showing the ability to break explosive plays or have long drives downfield. And I know it's really easy to talk about the 4th down conversions that don't happen, but I do want to say, thinking about their 4th and short success throughout the season as a whole, and earlier in the game, in the 4th and short, when Nick Minicucci powers up the middle, like that's been, I think, 100% success rate this year. So even if you get in those 4th and shorts, finding a way to still do that and do it well and work down the field and score. I'd like to see a run for 50-plus break for a touchdown. I think I need to see that. And I would love to see the first drive of the game. So I'll be thinking about that as we keep going there. So Dan, what's yours?
I think about it in a Belichick way, or I guess I attribute this to Belichick in my mind, but it's really just a football cliche, so I don't know why necessarily. You can check me on the Belichick thing, Bryce, but just talking about teams that are so strong in part because they take away their opponent's strength, and they take away what their opponent does best. Louisiana Tech has the capability on paper to take away what Delaware does best, passing the ball on offense. So looking at Louisiana Tech with 13 interceptions to lead Conference USA in interceptions grabbed on the season, number 1 in the league, Louisiana Tech doing that. They've returned a quartet of those balls for touchdowns. That's what Louisiana Tech is really catching eyes with on an overall really good-looking defense. So I look at it as my thing to watch in my contribution to 3 and Out is Delaware has really enjoyed leaning on Nick Minicucci. I think they've been happy to see Nick loft that ball up there, throw it up for Duplessis and Wilson. I love seeing it. It's getting the ball down the field. Donovan Lewis is part of that conversation too. Jake Thal even, I feel like, I don't have the number right in front of me, but I don't think Thal's even had the same number of targets. And it's not as if Delaware's been suffering in the sense that it can't find its options downfield. Like Thal probably is, on average, he's going to be due for more catches and more targets, or if the ball finds him along the way. And even along the way, Delaware hasn't had issues with throwing it. Until, what if it gets taken away? It's a possessions game. We say it time and again. Louisiana Tech having a nose for the ball. Delaware typically protecting it pretty well with Nick Minicucci. That's going to be my thing to watch. Does Louisiana Tech stall a Delaware drive, end a Delaware drive by way of swiping it?
Well, Dan, I'm just do a little snake draft right here. I'll let you wrap us up there, and then I'll let you kick us off here for the score prediction.
This feels like a playoff game to me, Bryce. I'm taking this very seriously. It's easy to say that when it's a huge conference game and it's one coming off of a humiliation for Delaware on the road. Now you're back in Delaware's building. So I guess it isn't too big a shock to hear me say it just feels like a playoff game. It's not as if the season is over on the road to 6 wins if Delaware doesn't win on Saturday against Louisiana Tech, but it does feel like a playoff game in just the spiritual sense for me in following Delaware, because this year has taken a turn from the vision I had after the Western Kentucky game that was so narrow, for UT. It's taken a turn. We've gotten the reality of playing Jacksonville State and Liberty. I don't think it's coincidence. You think about Jack State and Liberty on the road and playing strong running backs on the road. I don't think it's coincidence that those outcomes in those games were what they were for Delaware. And then Delaware disjointed on offense at Jack State enough to suffer, and disjointed defensively in the back end of the game at Liberty. So all that is to say, I've had my expectations dampened by the turn this thing has taken over the recent weeks. You got in November and you're thinking it's a new start at Liberty, and it tanked the way we described in the front half of the show. So now playing Louisiana Tech feels like a playoff. I'm not willing to pick against Delaware in this playoff spot just yet. I may look foolish for that in the end, but I'm putting my stock in Delaware at home. This is a bit unprecedented. We don't know what we're going to get in terms of how Delaware responds to not catching a break in the schedule. You're not catching a break in the schedule. You're not seeing the Blue Hens getting a back-end CAA team in the house. So it's not as if Delaware can really fall back on playing to its baseline. Now, Delaware is going to have to play above what its baseline has started to look like over the course of recent weeks. So it's a dicey call for me, but I am not allowing myself to go against Delaware in what I think is metaphorically a playoff game. So I'm going to go with Delaware. 30 points has been that mark offensively. I'm going to go Delaware hitting the 30-point mark, which is going to be taking Louisiana Tech above its averages defensively. But Delaware's record, Delaware wants to get one back when it scores 30 points. UT scored 30 points and lost most recently. So if I'm going to take Delaware to win, it's going to be playing Delaware's kind of ball, which involves an explosive player too. Bryce talked about that, so I'll go with Delaware just eking it out to past 30 at 31 to 25. So Delaware by 6 is a lot more than I really feel comfortable with, but I just get the feeling that that's what I'm going to roll with. If I'm going to go with Delaware, I'm going to lean all the way into it. But you can tell this is the most uncomfortable I've been making a pick, because I don't think we have a ton of things to go back on, points of reference for Delaware in these moments. This is one of those tests that is, I think, going to characterize the whole FBS year that we look at.
Dan, thanks for that, because you know what I'm referencing these vibes? I'm thinking of the Liberty game, a little bit like the Colorado game. You hung in there, you had some good offensive things to take away. Overall, though, you kind of got picked apart. You lose by over 20. So, I'm not going to talk about, there's a lot of positives to take, but you get a full week to get back at home in front of a massive crowd. Thinking about homecoming, I think it's going to be a sellout. I know it's super close to officially being called one. I'm sure by game day it will be. The UConn game, I think about it from the sense of the defense. I don't think there's a lot from the Liberty game to have a lot of confidence in the defense heading in this weekend, but I'm thinking about my prediction here is that Delaware gets a job done at home. I think that the offense I think we find ourselves in another shootout. I think that Delaware is up, I'm going to say 35-31, with Louisiana Tech having the ball with a chance to win the game. And I think about the defense making a stop at the end. Similarly to the UConn game, it just kind of flipped and the defense making a stop above or behind. So I'm going to go 35-31 Delaware. We can't lose in homecoming. I think about last weekend against Liberty. I didn't have good vibes. It was their homecoming weekend. I think about just how big that momentum was for them coming off their long break. And I'm viewing this 3-game stretch similar in the September 3-game stretch, but we won't have a month off like we did after the FIU game. I think of the UConn game similar with the Liberty, or the Colorado game similar to the Liberty game, the UConn game similarly with Saturday, and then next weekend against at Sam Houston being at FIU. So that's the vibes I'm trying to start. I'm hoping that if I become true, I think where I'm going to be going next week. But focus on this one first. Hens win 35-31.
I think you could even add the Middle Tennessee game as kind of an analog to the Delaware
No, that's great.
State game.
I'm with you there.
You're at home against a team that you think you should beat handily. You win by less than you want to, and then you keep it moving. I don't like this matchup. I didn't like last week's matchup. It's written all over my face. I think everyone can tell how I feel right now. I'm thinking, the wing tee and the 5-2 defense win this game at Liberty, blah, 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 blah. You've heard it from me a billion times. I wasn't even born until 2000. So I don't know why that's my snap reaction all the time. However, I like the positivity that we're experiencing right now. I like the analog to earlier in the season. It seems that Middle Tennessee, kind of after our multiple buys, sort of kickstarted like a new half of the season. And if you want to look at it that way, then I love it. There are other ways to look at this game. For instance, a huge letdown in a spot that is a game that we should probably lose. Looking at the history of the season up to this point, it's at homecoming, which should be just a great time for everyone coming home who's maybe has mixed feelings about the FBS move in the first place, having their minds made up for them in front of a crowd of 19,000 people, all feeling the exact same way of, oh my God, I can't believe that this is a team that we're losing to. I thought that this move was going to blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of noise is what I'm trying to say. But I like the noise that we're creating here, the joyful noise, if you will. And it just so happened that when I woke up this morning, I couldn't on my big bulldog head that I'd ordered. It came in the mail 2 days ago. I got a bulldog head instead of a helmet for this headgear selection. And it might make me look stupid, but I have to pick Delaware to win. There's just too much at stake for this team to go into homecoming and lose at home in a game that you kind of don't have any right to win by more than a few points, and that's if you put a good game plan together. But I think that this team didn't like being embarrassed last week, and that's going to be the main motivator going into homecoming, where they don't want to get embarrassed again. They're going to put together a good defensive game, and they're going to come out with the win. I'm going to say I like the 31-point mark that we've used. I was right last week when I said 31 points. Maybe if we scored 31, then they would have only scored 56 last week. But I'm going to say Delaware 34, Louisiana Tech 24. 31. Let's give them the extra points. I don't like this matchup really, but I just really hope it comes down to execution. It comes down to Jimmy's and Joe's, maybe as well as X's and O's. I'm on the defensive side, so that's my pick.
The Blue Hens have won every single home game that all three of us are on the same side. I'm sure this won't come back to bite us, and I'm sure this won't get clipped if it doesn't go this way from anyone. So, but regardless, thanks for joining us here with another week here at Feathers and Field Goals. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Please comment down below your score prediction for this homecoming weekend, and then also share what your favorite memory was. If you were a UD alum, share your favorite memory when you were in school here. Excited to get into Newark and see the sellout crowd in the tub this weekend. But for us here at Feathers and Field Goals, we will see you next week, and thanks for joining us for another episode.